Okay. Now, one of the questions, we do, well, I mean, we've spoken in general about quite a few of these questions, but, let's look at today. Talking about where councils are and where they family need to go. But what are the things that are coming up and have actually arrived? And one of them I could mention is drones, right? The role of drones in local government, right?
Yep.
What are the things coming up potentially which are going to change the practices and put even more focus on asset management?
Yeah, well, certainly drones are, in my
it's the obvious
keeping up with what's happening. I look at the Internet of Things, fascination about some of that stuff, and the conferences that I've been to around the world, through the 2011 through to 2020 when I did a lot of travelling around on behalf of IPWA, etc. There's some amazing stuff out there. So artificial intelligence is coming into play big time, and it's not something we can sit back from. I think I'd jump on the bandwagon of saying we need to embrace this, but understand what it is.
Yeah,
they've decided to allow AI to be used in schools now. I think that's a good thing. Otherwise, they'd use it anyway. So what we can do is teach the kids on how to understand the outputs from AI and be able to use critical thinking.
Yep.
That's the most important thing that needs to be taught in schools these days.
Yeah.
But asset data collection. So I think there's some amazing stuff happening now, and it's not necessarily that new, but with the big unit can travel at 80 kilometres an hour and actually pick up. We used to do the Benkelman million tests, etc. Plonk, plonk, plonk. They just travel at 80 k's, and particularly when you're losing the experience and skills of what were the generalists that could look at a pavement and say whether it's foundation or pavement or whatever that's failing. These machines can actually do it and give you empirical evidence to tell you what's going on. So you don't necessarily have to have all that knowledge, but certainly helps. So I think so. There's all sorts of data collection things. So I see that as a good thing. And you've got asset tracking. You're tracking, with mowers and tractors and GPS on garbage collection and all sorts of things. So that's been around a while, but that's going to increase. So the other thing I see in the high level, Sandy, picking this up from my ISO stuff, is that the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, if you look at a lot of the council plans just around Victoria, the councils I work with, have a look at their plans, they're incorporating this stuff right up in the community planning level. There's the 6 capitals, which is another thing that's impacting. So in the ISO world, we're trying to work out where do they get incorporated into asset management. Do they drive asset management, or does asset management drive them? I'm now on a subgroup, technical group 3, sustainability. So we're now talking about, does asset management drive sustainability, or does sustainability as a policy drives what you do in asset management? So we've got to produce a white paper by January before the Rio plenary to help the head ISO committee find a way forward or see the way forward on how we incorporate sustainability, climate change, all that stuff. Another field I see coming into play is natural assets.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that one.
Canada is off and running and funded by the federal government, believe it or not, which is terrific. Part of our advocacy with our asset management committee would be to sort of push some of these high-level issues, depending on what comes out in our strategic plan. But natural assets are absolutely critical. I've never really seen them in any asset management planning.
Yes.
An example, I think it's in the latest one of the IPWEA electronic circulars is there's a town in Canada that sits on top of a massive aquifer, and they're totally reliant on that for water. So that is part of their asset management plan, and so it should be.
Of course it should.
So it's just pushing the boundaries now of where we should think in relation to asset management and, again, our sustainability. So this is where sustainability makes you think broader than bricks and mortar.
Yes. Yes. Did you get it? Did you see my comment in LinkedIn on the natural assets?
I've been in too many meetings over the last week.
And it was only last week, actually, I did the comment. It was about the natural assets. You know, I put a comment in there to get people thinking. You know, as far as I can see, looking around the world, Canada is the best at natural assets.
Yeah,
Dealing with
they're
natural
on the
assets.
front foot.
Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
Yep. I first came across it in our subgroups we're working on when you're dealing with asset managers, or, you know, they manage to hold in these very large cities in Canada.
Yep.
And they started talking about natural assets and things. And so we have a chat, and now it's been funded at the government level.
Yep.
For municipalities to get in and actually understand them. So I think it's fantastic. Like, that comes into play when, if you go back to the Millennium Drought, here in Victoria, they ended up having to run pipeline, north-south pipelines. They've linked Geelong and Melbourne, and pulling water to Melbourne from the Barwon aquifers down under the Otways, etc. So they're the sort of things. Well, these are our natural assets. They serve us, and and I can remember doing some work down at Colac Otway Shire many years ago, talking to an old farmer near one of those big bores that suck it out of the aquifer. And he said that when he was a kid, his grandfather told him the water always runs out of this natural spring, and it's stopped. So that tells me that these aquifers. So who's looking at that? So who's managing that in the bigger scheme of things? And I think listening to, I think it was Elaine Carbine giving a talk down at Geelong a year or so ago. She was saying that with the population growth expected around Geelong and that now, that they're going to have to go to, when I asked the question, well, where's the water coming from? They're going to be using desal.
Yeah.
So it's expensive. So maybe Melbourne should be put on restrictions during droughts so that we don't draw those aquifers way down. But that's political.
Yeah, it is. Well, the other thing is to turn the bloody desal on and pipe it around.
We've got one now, yes, that's right. But I think this natural asset planning will, and if you talk long term, will make us look out there.
Absolutely.
Give irrespective of climate change, what is a man-made impact on our natural assets that immediately affect us?
Yeah.
So we've got to get a grip on that as well.
Yeah, it's certainly changing the way people think. When I was doing a lot of work in New Zealand, they had their the city's risk, what can I call it? Risk management or risk recovery plans, whatever it was, or emergency response. And they had all the different authorities, the police, SES, whatever, involved in that process. And, they worked it out well. We've got a long way to go before we can produce that sort of stuff, because it needs to cover all those things.
Yeah, and that's just part of a journey. And I know it's a cliche sort of term, but as long as we're on the journey and we're making our way forward, that's a positive. So one of the other key things, I think, methodologies or whatever, as far as might be game changers in asset management, and as part of this natural assets and whatever, everyone needs to understand the circular economy. Everyone needs to understand it. And there's again launched at the June Asset Management Congress up in Gold Coast. Was IPWH released a practice note called the Circular Economy. And it is really good. And it's not necessarily a thick document, but it uses and they're all electronic now, so they actually use hyperlinks and things
Yeah.
to all sorts of other references.
Yeah.
So if you wish to get into the circular economy, you pick up that practice note, you can go anywhere you like to understand it. So I'm about to raise that at our sustainability meeting next week for ISO, that we don't want to reinvent this stuff when a lot of these documents, but it'd be great to be able to link them all together, like a wiki.
Yep.
So it's all there.
Yep. No, I agree.
People who want to understand it.
I agree.
And it will be a key input into asset management.
No, well, that's good. Things are happening by the sounds of it. Big time.
We hope so.
Well, you know what it's like. You've got to push that rock just a little bit to make it move.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Just got to make sure someone's on the steering wheel.
Yeah. Enjoyed this video? Press the like button and subscribe. If you'd like to see more, please click on the Patreon link below and sign up.